Hey boys, how's it going? I hope it's going well. I hope your Thanksgiving was terrific. I'm hoping that your holiday weekend, if you got one, was awesome. And I hope that everything in your life is good. So, today I want to talk about why I prefer World of Warcraft Classic over modern retail World of Warcraft, and also why I prefer older editions of Dungeons and Dragons and the OSR to modern Dungeons and Dragons. So, and I think the two are really related. And before people say you're just old, you have to change with the times, I'll have you know. I'll have you know right now. Other than books, I do not own any physical media. I don't have CDs. I don't have records. I don't have cassette tapes. I don't have DVDs or VHS tapes. It is what it is, right? I don't like those things. I think they clutter. And there's no need in the age of smartphones and Spotify or Apple Music or whatever, right? There's just no need. There's no need to pay other than a small subscription fee. It's like I don't buy audiobooks either. I have Audible, right? I listen to mostly Spotify and Audible and podcasts, which I listen to mostly on Spotify. It is what it is. So, why do I prefer World of Warcraft Classic and older editions of Dungeons and Dragons? I think it comes to the point of, well, it is what it is. And those are the editions that I grew up on. And I like what I like. And it's okay if you like the newer versions. No one's ever going to say otherwise, right? Well, some people might, but they're assholes. So you don't have to listen to them. It's okay. So, I mean, I use add ons for WoW Classic. That's okay. And yeah, I just think that there's a beauty in the simplicity of it, right? I started playing World of Warcraft tail end of 2004, so a couple months after it came out, right? Either late 2004 or really, really early 2005. So a while before Burning Crusade came out. And I leveled up a warrior, and we used to do all the cool stuff like Molten Core. And I never really went beyond that because I got bored. Got a little thing called Altitis and never focused on progressing past Molten Core with my warrior. That's okay. That's fine. I was having fun. And I was not on a progression server. I was on a server as Jewel Narub in a guild called Nightmare Kingdoms, where the guild leader, Crippler, was a really cool guy. And I don't know, coming back to World of Warcraft after all these years, right now I am doing Season of Discovery because, it's new and but it still has that classic feel to it, right? With the slow level progression and the kind of chill way of playing, the way of playing that I like because I really like role playing games. And World of Warcraft, the original, was the closest MMO that I could find to a real role playing game, other than Guild Wars. And Guild Wars is still one of my favorite games, mostly because it was awesome, and two, the pace was awesome, and there's a nostalgia in that. And I picked it up last year during a Steam sale, right? Got the original trilogy. So Prophecies, Factions, and Nightfall. And I love it. I absolutely love it. And the fact that you can play it solo, right? With heroes and henchmen. Because once you get into your 30s and 40s, chances are, not everyone, but chances are you're going to have a career, you're going to have a family, and you have other stuff to do, right? You shouldn't have to put the rest of your life on hold to raid or coordinate between 25 to 40 people who probably all live in different time zones than you. If anything, I think that it works, right? It 100% works because you see guilds like take down world first and everything else. So that right there proves that remote work can work, right? And that's the argument that I've always used. How can you create and maintain a culture through remote work? Molten Core, AQ40, Naxxramas. If those things can be done, working remotely can be done too, right? Scheduling remotely. There's a lot more to it, but that's not what this video is about, right? As far as Dungeons and Dragons go, I'm not really a big fan of 5th edition or 5.5 or whatever it's up to now. I skimmed through the newest player's handbook, the one that recently came out a couple months ago. To be fair, it was a PDF of it with someone's finger on a few pages. It's fine. It's fine. The artwork was interesting. The layout of it was good. Probably better than any other edition. But the rules and the options were a bit much, if you know what I mean. Too much. And I feel the same thing about Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Right? There's just too much. And this is, honestly, I grew up with 2nd Edition. Okay? 2nd Edition AD&D was my foray into tabletop RPGs. And I loved it. And yeah, it was bloated. And then when 3rd edition came out, and then 3.5, it got even more bloated, but I absolutely loved it. I knew the rules backwards and forwards, so when D&D went off into 4th edition, and Pathfinder came out, my group just switched over to Pathfinder. We didn't have to really do any conversions. It was more or less the same. And 4th edition kind of flopped, even though after the fact, after reading the rules and everything, it didn't really deserve the hate, right? But I'm not a fan of the modern gaming scene. I prefer my games, let's face it, kind of slow, kind of clunky, right? So I like being able to exploit things, right? I like to be able to, when I game, right, it's for escapism. It's for something that's comforting that I can relieve stress with. That's basically what I game for, right? Gaming is my stress relief on both tabletop and video game wise. That's okay. So I think that modern games are too flashy, too hectic, and too much of an amusement ride or amusement park, right? And that works for a lot of people, and more power to them. I'm glad it does, right? I'm glad that D&D is still going strong. I'm glad that World of Warcraft is 20 years old, right? And still kicking and still releasing expansion packs. Not many video games can say that, and that's awesome, right? D&D was, or World of Warcraft was a big part of my 20s, right? I played all the way up to Wrath of the Lich King and quit like a year before Cataclysm came out, right? I came back for Cataclysm. I hated what they did to the starting zones. A couple of the changes were okay, right? We're gonna reconnect. A few of the changes were okay. I had to do something there. But overall, it was like, and the fact that you had to go all the way through Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King before you could go with any of the new content was a little weird. I tried retail World of Warcraft a couple months ago. 100% not for me, right? Way too flashy, way too fast, right? There's no progression anymore. It's just all progression and the race to the end game. And to me, the end game was boring and always was. I preferred the journey. I prefer the lower level zones. I've played Alliance a couple of times, and I'm mostly the Horde, right? The Forsaken get me trolls, obviously. Orcs were cool. Tauren, I'm not a big hippie, so it is what it is. But the human starting areas of Elwyn Forest, Westfall, Red Ridge, and what is it, Duskwood? Darkwood? Whatever it is, right? That was amazing. That was some of the best gaming, the best questing, the best level design that I've seen in a video game ever, right? Because of the way that it progressed, the story going in. I don't like world-threatening events, right? Constantly, right? Forgotten Realms for Dungeons and Dragons had the same thing going, right? I love first and second edition Forgotten Realms. Love it. Third edition was okay too. But then when it got to the Spell Plague and the Shattering and everything else, it just got boring. Like, oh, look at this. Where another thing that threatens the realms. Where, yeah, back in second and third edition, right, you had the Time of Troubles, you had all that jazz, but it was kind of cool, I guess. But I really like smaller scale adventures. Like, I am a big fan of sword and sorcery stories where it's just an adventure, right? There's nothing world threatening. There's character threatening, right? City threatening, maybe. But nothing that's going to end the world unless the heroes rise up and stop it. I prefer that over epic fantasy, and I always have, right? And I like my video games and my D&D games the same way. I like smaller scale adventures where your character realistically could make a difference, right? And that's we could go into mechanics and rules and theory crafting and all of that stuff for tabletop games. But I think the simpler the system, the better it is, right? You shouldn't have to constantly be poring over books when you're in the middle of a game. And here's the thing. In the long run, the rules system doesn't matter. What matters is how good a group you have. And by that, I mean how well you mesh. How well the DM knows the players and how the players work with each other, right? And how the story is told. That's what matters in a tabletop RPG. Rules don't. So, it is my preference that those rules be as simple as possible. And character sheets, honestly, should be able to fit on a 3x5 index card. If they can't, it's bad design, in my opinion. You shouldn't have to have an entire folder for your character, right? So, especially if you're starting off at level 1. If you're level 1, you're not an adventurer. You're above average and you got either sucked in or whatever, right? So I'm not a power gamer, never have been. I'm not a min-maxer, never have been. I respect those that do because it does kind of look fun, right? I will never play on hardcore WoW, right? It looks fun. The videos are fun, especially the death compilations, but it's not for me, right? It's just not. But I prefer older, stripped down, slower, less world impacting things, right? Just that's the way it is. That's the way I like it. And it's okay if you disagree. Be even cooler if you did agree. But it is what it is. We all like what we like. Now, we could get into how Wizards of the Coast is a terrible company. And I don't even know if it's Wizards of the Coast anymore. It might just be Hasbro that ruined or lost the gamers' trust in their company, right? With the changes of the OGL that they tried to ram through, the D&D Beyond stuff, the layoffs, all that stuff. It's just, I don't know. I don't know. It's all crazy. We could get into that. I won't. Because I don't know enough about it other than the surface level bad stuff that I've heard. I'm against layoffs for balancing the budget anyway. A lot of their newer artwork, and no offense to the artists, but they look like very corporate AI designed, right? I prefer the stylings of Larry Elmore and the original first, second, and third edition art. That's just the kind of fantasy art that I like, right? I like the old World of Warcraft art too. I think in its own styling, that is pretty cool. I don't like the new stuff. And again, like I said earlier, it's not because I'm out of touch or because I'm old. That might be true. But again, I don't have physical media. Again, other than books. So I don't think it's that. Right? So it's just what I like. And that's okay. So I don't know. But I prefer first edition or BECMI D&D. The Rule Cyclopedia was probably the best book ever written. So, but for OSRs, the ones that I prefer are take note here. Basic Fantasy RPG. That one, hands down, is my favorite one. Written by Chris Gonnerman. It was $5 on Amazon, but inflation, so I think it's up to $5.50 now. In fact, let me check, because I'd be really embarrassed if it wasn't. Yes, Cyber Monday, cool. Okay. Okay. Wow. It actually went up a lot to $8.35. Last I checked, it was $5.50. But I think the PDF is still free up on the site, and all the rules, all the adventures, all the monsters and stuff are free as PDF. Last I checked. Basic Fantasy RPG is a stripped down, old school redoing of 3rd edition rules. So it has ascending armor class, and the weapons that you're used to, right? There's prereqs for races, for classes, which I'm not a big fan of, right? Just let people play what they want. So, the next one that I think everybody should check out is Swords and Wizardry White Box. Why white box? I don't know where the book is actually. Because it's a very small book, very, very, very easy, and it gives you the option of either ascending or descending armor class. And I know descending armor class throws a lot of people for a loop, just like Thaco did, right? To hit AC 0. So, it's your preference, right? Of course, old school essentials. Old school essentials, also very good. Yeah. And then there's, of course, the original Osric. So these are the ones that I recommend. So, I mean, it is what it is. Now, if you're lucky enough, or you can find a copy, first edition D&D. But if you have Old School Essentials or Osric, you don't need it, right? Because it's kind of, sort of the same. Osric especially is this in just a better format. So, we have Beckme. I think it's Beckme. BECMI. So basic, expert, so on and so forth. There's a really cool thing called Micro D20, which is a very, 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 very stripped down version of 3rd edition. It's actually really cool. The PDF for it is free if you can find it, and it is like 8 pages. That's it. Honestly, the funny thing is the basic version of D&D 5th edition, which was the PDF they released before the actual core books came out, and I'm talking the original fifth edition, not the new one, right? The newest one that came out. Was actually really good. It was much better, in my opinion, than the one that came out after. So the actual core books. There were 4 classes, basic races, which I like. I don't like the sillier races, right? Or species, or whatever we're calling them now. I think human, dwarf, elf, and halfling are more than enough. I think that half orc is good to have, right? And half elf. Why do you need anything else, right? Why do you need cat people or Azamar or tieflings as core races, right? Well, we could throw gnomes in there too, right? For the base races. But a fantasy adventure doesn't have to look like the Mos Eisley Cantina. And I think it's a shame that that's what a lot of the newer books are going for, right? Plus, I don't really like what they've done to the tiefling, right? Tieflings are creatures of the abyss, or the hells, right? Depending on how you want to, which lineage they're from, right? The ones from the abyss, why do they look like the ones from the Nine Hells? Doesn't make any sense. I love the Planescape 2nd edition box set with the random roll tiefling traits, right? I think that was amazing. And I know that Volo's Guide to Monsters for 5th edition kind of addressed some of that, but not enough, right? It was like a D100 table, if I remember correctly. It has been a while since I've looked at it, but I also had my own D100 list, things like that for it too, because I think that Tieflings should be chaotic. Azamar, probably a little bit more orderly, um, but that's my opinion. I don't like what they've done. I don't like the furry races, right? Um, I think the core races are just fine, and you can even drop half orc, half elf, and gnome from that because you can just have a human or an elf be like reskinned as either half orc or um, half elf. That's me though. There doesn't need to be anything different. I also don't like certain races only being able to be certain classes. That's the only thing that I would really change from classic D&D, right? Because play what you want, right? And there is nothing inherently wrong with a dwarf mage or dwarf wizard or a halfling wizard, right? They're not dumber or smarter than humans. They can learn it too, unless the setting that you're playing in actually has a reason that they can't. Like Dragonlance not having any clerics until the War of the Lance, things like that, right? So, don't get me started on what they've done to orcs. I blame Warcraft for that. So, turning them into from these demonic, demon fueled, bloodlust, killing machines, right? To hippies, basically, right? And in the newest D&D book, they look like they're from Portland, Oregon, which is weird. So I don't know how that happened. But orcs, especially in D&D, again, depending on your setting, should be like a bloodthirsty horde that is out for nothing but destruction. They are chaotic evil. So I don't know. So what do you think? What do you prefer? Do you like the newer MMOs and the newer rules of tabletop RPGs, or do you prefer the classics, the old school, the slower, more grindy, the comfy, if you would, versions? Let me know, and let me know why. So if you've made it this long, thank you. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe if you want. I'm going to make some more comfy videos like this. This has been cool. All right. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time.